I didn't buy that house because it was pretty. I bought it because it was free. Free in a way most people don't even think about anymore. No board meetings, no warning letters taped to my door, no strangers telling me what shade of beige my fence was allowed to be. Just a small brick house sitting right at the edge of a place called Hawthorne Ridge, a neighborhood wrapped tight in rules, but technically not allowed to touch me. The for sale sign had barely been standing a week when I made the offer. 3 bedrooms, tired shutters, grass that had clearly given up trying to impress anyone years ago. It sat on a skinny strip of county land, divided from Hawthorne Ridge by a narrow road most people never thought twice about. That road was everything. On one side, total HOA control. On my side, none. I knew exactly what I was doing. I grew up in neighborhoods like Hawthorne Ridge, places where grown adults walked around with clipboards measuring grass height like it was a moral issue, where kids got yelled at for leaving bikes in the driveway, where every mailbox looked the same because heaven forbid someone express a personality. I promised myself a long time ago that if I ever had the chance, I'd live right next to that kind of place, but never under it. So when I closed on that house, it felt less like buying property and more like planting a flag. Moving day was hot, loud, and sweaty. I was halfway into unloading boxes from the U-Haul when I heard it. That sound, sharp, deliberate heels clicking against pavement like someone wanted to be announced before they even spoke. "Excuse me." I turned, already knowing exactly who I was about to see. Platinum blonde hair that didn't move even in the breeze, oversized sunglasses, a floral blouse tucked too tightly into white pants, posture stiff like she was permanently bracing for disappointment. She smiled, but it never made it past her mouth. "Hi there. I'm Denise Holloway," she said, voice bright and rehearsed. "President of the Hawthorne Ridge Homeowners Association." There it was. The title, delivered like a crown. She didn't ask my name, didn't ask how the move was going. She just kept talking. "I wanted to introduce myself right away and let you know that this neighborhood has very strict guidelines. Paint colors, landscaping, fencing, parking, all exterior changes must be approved by our board." I wiped sweat off my forehead with the back of my hand and leaned against a box labeled kitchen, paused just long enough to enjoy this moment. "Nice to meet you, Denise. But this house isn't part of Hawthorne Ridge." Her smile twitched. "I am sorry. It's county property," I said calm, almost casual. "No HOA." She laughed once, short and sharp. "That's not possible. This entire street is Hawthorne Ridge. Not this lot. Check your plat maps. This property was never annexed." I watched it register. The way her jaw tightened, the way the smile finally slipped. She didn't like surprises, especially the kind that didn't involve her approval. "Well," she said slowly, crossing her arms, "it should be. And if you live here, you'll need to abide by our standards. That's how we keep property values up." I crossed my arms too, mirroring her without even thinking about it. "With respect, I'll keep my house how I like. That's how I keep my sanity." For a second, she just stared at me like I'd spoken a foreign language. Then she spun around and walked off, already pulling out her phone, heels clacking faster this time, anger bleeding through every step. I'd been in the neighborhood less than 2 hours, and I already had a problem. Over the next few days, Denise made sure I knew it. Every morning, I'd open my mailbox and find neatly folded packets stuffed inside. Hawthorne Ridge rules printed in bold, sections highlighted in neon yellow. No basketball hoops visible from the street. No work vehicles parked overnight. No sheds without approval. It was like she thought if she sent them enough times, reality might change out of sheer exhaustion. Then came the visits. One afternoon, I was planting shrubs along the fence line when Denise showed up with 2 other board members trailing behind her like backup dancers. She didn't even bother with hello. "Those bushes are not approved." "Good thing you don't get vote here," I said, pulling off my gloves. Her face tightened. "You think you're clever. I think I know my property line. Everyone else here follows the rules," she snapped. "You're going to drag this whole neighborhood down." The man beside her cleared his throat, uncomfortable. "It might be easier if you just joined voluntarily." I laughed real and loud. "Pay dues to people who already hate me? No chance." Denise leaned in close enough that I could smell her perfume. "Mark my words, you won't last here." That when I realized this wasn't about property values. It was about control. And I'd taken something from her just by existing. At night, I started noticing shadows on the curb. People standing there longer than they needed to, flashlights sweeping across my house. One morning, chalk words were scrawled across my driveway. Join or leave. Trash cans ended up in the street. Lawn clippings showed up on my porch. Small things, petty things, the kind of stuff meant to wear you down quietly. But instead of backing off, I leaned in. I painted my shutters a deep forest green, built a fire pit right in the yard, parked my old pickup front and center in the driveway like a statement piece. Every choice felt like a reminder that freedom still existed, even here. And that's when Denise finally snapped. Denise didn't snap all at once. She unraveled. It started subtle, the way these things usually do. A little louder footsteps when she walked past my place. A little longer stare when she slowed her car, pretending to check her phone while clearly counting how many things I had done wrong in her head. I could feel it building like pressure behind a dam. Then one Saturday morning, it finally broke. I was standing in my backyard messing with the grill. Nothing fancy, just trying to get it cleaned up for a small cookout later that afternoon. The sun was already high, cicadas buzzing like static in the trees, that slow, lazy hum that makes summer feel heavier than it already is. I remember thinking, this is exactly why I bought this place. That's when I heard her. You can't live here. Not shouted. Screamed. Raw. Cracked. Unfiltered. I looked up and saw Denise marching across the street like she was charging in a battle. Hair pulled tighter than usual, sunglasses gone so everyone could see the fire in her eyes. Her voice echoed across the cul-de-sac, sharp enough that a couple of garage doors froze halfway open. This neighborhood is not for people like you. She yelled. You don't follow rules. You don't respect order. You don't belong here. Everything stopped. I mean everything. Lawn mowers cut out. A basketball bounced once and then rolled to a stop. Curtains twitched. Front doors cracked open just enough for faces to appear behind glass. The whole street was holding its breath. I set the tongs down slowly, wiped my hands on a towel, and walked to the edge of my lawn. I didn't rush. I didn't raise my voice. I wanted her to feel the difference between us. Denise, I said, steady, you don't get to decide where I belong. This is my home. I bought it fair and square, and no amount of screaming is going to change that. Her hand shook as she pointed at me. We'll see about that. I'll call the county. I'll call the board. I'll call whoever I have to. Someone will make this right. I smiled. Not smug. Not mean. Just calm. Good luck. The county already confirmed everything. You don't have jurisdiction here. She made this sound, this animal sound, like frustration turning into something feral, then spun around and stormed back to her house, slamming the door so hard her front windows rattled. For weeks after that, people whispered about it. You'd hear it in half-finished conversations at the mailbox, see it in the way neighbors avoided Denise's eyes when she walked by. A few people started stopping at my place instead. One guy brought over a six-pack like he was delivering contraband. A woman from 3 houses down dropped off banana bread and whispered, I just wanted you to know, some of us are glad you're here. It didn't make me feel victorious. Mostly it made me feel sad for her. But Denise wasn't done. 2 months later, a letter showed up in my mailbox. Thick envelope. Official looking. Hawthorne Ridge, HOA letterhead stamped across the top like a warning label. Inside was a formal notice accusing me of violating community standards. Unauthorized structures. Improper parking. Una prueba de exterior modificaciones. At the bottom, bolded and underlined, was the threat. $200 per day in fines until compliance. I laughed out loud standing there on my porch, the sound coming out of me before I could stop it. Not because it was funny, because it was desperate. I didn't even go inside. I got in my truck and drove straight to the county courthouse. The clerk behind the counter took one look at the letter and raised an eyebrow. Then she smiled. Then she laughed, the kind of laugh you only hear from someone who's seen this exact thing way too many times. They can't fine you, she said. They don't have authority over your parcel. If anything, this qualifies as harassment. Harassment, I repeated, letting the word settle. If they keep contacting you, you can pursue legal action. I walked back out into the sunlight, feeling something shift inside me. Not anger, not fear, clarity. That night, I sat at my kitchen table and wrote my own letter. No emotion, no sarcasm, just facts. Property law citations, boundary maps, dates, clear language outlining harassment statutes and legal consequences. At the bottom, I wrote one sentence in bold. Any further attempts to impose HOA restrictions on this property will result in immediate legal action. The next morning, I walked it over and slid it into Denise's mailbox. That evening, I watched from my porch. She pulled the envelope out, glanced at it, frowned, then opened it. I could see it happen through her front window, the way her shoulders stiffened as she read, the color draining from her face before rushing back in a deep, furious red. She crumpled the paper in her fist, stood there shaking, then threw it onto the counter and slammed her door so hard the sound echoed down the street. And just like that, it stopped. No more leaflets, no more patrols, no more chalk messages or trash can games. The silence was almost unsettling at first, like the aftermath of a storm where you're not sure if another wave is coming. Life settled into something normal. I mowed when I wanted, planted tomatoes along the fence, built a small shed without asking anyone for permission. Neighbors came by more often now, barbecues stretching late into the evening, conversations drifting from sports to work to stories about how exhausting Denise had always been. One night, Tom from across the street sat with me by the fire pit, watching sparks float up into the dark. You know, he said, poking at the embers, I think you broke her. I laughed softly. I didn't break her. Nah, he said, smiling. You showed her the line, and she crossed it one too many times. Denise still glares when she drives past, still closes her blinds a little too fast when she notices me outside. But she doesn't yell anymore, doesn't knock on doors, doesn't patrol the sidewalk like she owns it. She learned something she never wanted to learn. Power only works where it's allowed. And sometimes, all it takes to change a whole dynamic is one person standing exactly where they're supposed to and refusing to move. The strange thing about winning a fight like that is how quiet it feels afterward. There's no parade, no apology letter, no moment where the villain steps forward and admits they were wrong. Life just keeps going. And somehow that's the part that changes you the most. By fall, my place didn't feel like the edge of Hawthorne Ridge anymore. It felt like its own little world. Leaves piled up when they piled up. The grass got cut when I had time, not when a schedule demanded it. I added a couple of Adirondack chairs around the fire pit, the cheap wooden kind that creak when you sit down, the kind that invites people to stay longer than they planned. Neighbors came over more often now. Not loudly, not all at once. Just little moments. A wave that lasted a second longer. A casual stop by the driveway that turned into an hour-long conversation. It was like people were testing the idea that maybe things didn't have to be so rigid. One evening, a woman named Claire from 2 houses down lingered after barbecue while everyone else filtered out. She watched the fire for a bit, then said quietly, I wish I'd fought her years ago. I didn't know what to say to that. Because the truth is, I hadn't fought Denise for anyone else. I fought because I couldn't live small. Because I knew if I gave in even a little, I'd disappear into the rules the way so many people already had. But standing there, hearing that, I realized something else had happened. Something bigger than my fence color or my shed. People have been waiting for permission to breathe. Denise, meanwhile, stayed inside more. Her blinds were always half closed now, like she wanted to see without being seen. Sometimes I'd catch movement behind them, a shadow pulling back too fast, like a kid who'd been caught staring. Other times, she'd drive past slowly, eyes forward, jaw tight, pretending I wasn't there even though we both knew better. Once, late one evening, our eyes met through her windshield as she passed. Just half a second, long enough for something unspoken to hang between us. She looked tired, not angry, not defeated, just worn out. And for the first time, I felt a flicker of something close to sympathy. Because people like Denise don't know how to exist without control. Take it away, and there's nothing underneath but noise and rules and fear of chaos. Winter came. Snow covered the street, softening edges, muting everything. The HOA decorations went up right on schedule, every house identical, wreaths aligned like soldiers. My place didn't match, and for once, no one said a word. By spring, Hawthorne Ridge felt different. Subtly, people laugh more outside. Kids rode bikes longer. There was less tension in the air, like something invisible had loosened its grip. One night, Tom came by again, beer in hand, and nodded toward Denise's dark house. She sold, you know. I blinked. What? Yeah, closed last week. Moving closer to her sister, I heard. I sat back, staring into the fire. I hadn't expected that. I wasn't sure what I felt about it. Relief, maybe, or the strange, hollow feeling that comes when a storm passes and you realize it shaped you more than you thought. Whoever moves in next won't know the history, Tom said. They'll just see you as the guy with the fire pit. I smiled at that. That night, after everyone left, I stayed outside alone, listening to the crickets, watching embers fade to ash. I thought about all the little moments that led here. The choice to buy that house, the first conversation, the letter, the line in the sand. And I realized something important. This was never really about HOA rules. It was about boundaries, about knowing where someone else's authority ends and your life begins, about how easily people give up pieces of themselves just to avoid conflict, and how much resentment builds when they do. Denise believed rules made her powerful. That order gave her meaning. But power without consent is fragile. It cracks the second someone refuses to play along. Across the street, the house sat dark and empty now, blinds open for the first time. No one watching, no one measuring, just another place waiting for someone to make it their own. I leaned back in my chair and let out a slow breath. I wasn't just surviving here anymore. I was thriving, right next door to where control used to live. And that, more than anything, felt like freedom. Now here's where I want to hear from you. Because stories like this always split people. Some will say Denise was just trying to protect property values, that rules keep communities running smoothly, that someone has to be in charge or everything falls apart. Others will say she crossed a line, that power without limits turns into bullying, and that no one should get to decide how someone else lives on their own property. So I want to know, where do you stand? Was I right to push back, knowing it would stir conflict? Or should I have kept my head down and avoided the fight altogether? Have you ever dealt with an HOA, a neighbor, or someone in authority who went too far? And did you stand up, or did you stay quiet? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I read them, all of them. And if this story hit a nerve, if it reminded you of a place or a person or a moment where you had to choose between peace and self-respect, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Because sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply refuse to move.